Sure. I mean, in short, currency devaluation is a crime, but we never think about it that way, and we never are presented with that information in a way that makes us realize what's actually going on. And when you go down to Malawi and you see people who are living in, maybe the sixth poorest country in the world, these are not people who need a 44% currency devaluation. They do not need a 44% reduction in their purchasing power. And if you were to actually create a weapon that were to harm the most people in a country, we could think about an atomic bomb or some sort of, biological weapon attack. None of them would be more devastating than a currency devaluation because none of them could hit every single person in that country and damage them. But that's what they've done. That's what the government and the IMF have done, and they're going to do more. The rumor is there's going to be another 25% currency devaluation soon. And again, we're just talking about people who can barely make ends meet, having the cost of whether it's corn or beans or chicken or anything they need go up. From the exchange rate was about 1,200 per dollar, 1,200 kwacha per dollar. Now it's like 1,800, and it might go up into the 2,000s. So we're talking about people who already can barely get by, just making it so much harder on them. But no one's going to go to prison for this. No one's going to get in trouble for it. It'll be on page A12 of the FT, as a procedural matter. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. When you think about that, we visited those. They're making $1 a day. $1 a day.
33 cents an hour sometimes, 10 cents an hour.
And all their costs are going to go up 44%. And then probably another 25%. And it is such a crime against humanity. So to experience that, watch these beautiful... How could somebody ever get out of that situation that's trapped in a global currency order that imposes that theft on people all over the world? It's staggering.
Did they say why they were doing it?
Well, so the devaluation was not made very clear to the public, right? So imagine if it was a democratic process and they had a referendum and the government went to the people and said, hey, who wants a 44% reduction in their purchasing power next Wednesday? I mean, it'd be 0 people would raise their hands, obviously. So obviously devaluations can never be democratic. Malawi even is somewhat of a democracy. It's not like a dictatorship, but the economic part of it is the hidden repression, right? That this is the part that they always hide from you. The people were surprised with this. Some of them knew it was coming, they heard rumors, but the government made no official announcements until the day of. And what you have to understand is the level of income in this country, according to the UN, is $640 per year. Now that's the median. So that includes all the wealthy people who live in the capitals, relatively wealthy people. So when we're out, in the countryside, people are probably making about $100 a year, maybe less, maybe 80, maybe making, again, 10 cents an hour. So for them, I mean, this is just so crushing. And it's probably worth noting, like, the mechanism of how it actually works. Like, most people, first of all, they look at the word currency devaluation and they view it as this neutral procedural matter, right? But fewer people actually think about, well, how does government actually do it? Do they just press a magic button? So in this case, what they will do in Malawi is the government will go to the banks and it'll say you need to change the exchange rate for the dollar right now. And that's one of the ways they impose it. They can also sell the kwacha into the market, or they can buy dollars on the market. So these are different tools they use to impose the devaluation. In either event, it takes effect quite immediately. And so it's interesting to see how do the commerce part of the country react? How do people react? So one of the big grocery stores, for example, it's a chain called Gain, run by South Africans there. They shut down for the day because they had to reprice everything. So, maybe something was 10,000 kwacha. Okay, well now it's going to be 15,000 or something like that. So they're repricing everything. Everything's shutting down for the day. People are reeling. They don't know what's going on. Jeff and I spoke to a young man the other day, and he was born in Zimbabwe. So he's seen the worst of the worst when it comes to hyperinflation. But they've never seen anything like this in Malawi, at least in the last 20, 30 years. You'd have to go back to the 80s. And really, it's just history rhymes, like what was happening in the 80s, where IMF imposed structural adjustments, caused in part by a macroeconomic world where the Fed had raised interest rates really fast and really hurt all these poor economies. That's what's happening right now. The Fed has raised interest rates really fast. It's made things really hard for these other economies. Governments are really struggling. I'm not making an excuse for them, but I'm telling you why they're doing it. They're doing it because they have no money. They're totally bankrupt.
How does this give the government more money?
Well, because a lot of people work in the public sector, for example, and this means that the government has to pay them 44% less based on foreign exchange, right? We were joking with a friend of ours the other day, and we said, oh, but it's okay, right? The government's going to give you a 44% raise, right? And they're like, no. No one gets a 44% raise. So the point is you're making all the things cost more, but no one's wages are going up, right?
It's a feature of the system, yeah.
But is there then a grey market for the kwacha where it's near its original value, if it's an artificially set?
No.
It's
like Alex says, it's imposed on every citizen because all prices go up. And if you're using the kwacha, then all prices relative to it go up.
So it's purely to cut their bill internally.
So I think a better way to look at this is So here's some of the things we don't see on the knock-on effect. Our living standards in the West are a result of stealing people's money here, because otherwise we couldn't get the raw materials and from there at that labor rate into the West. And in the West, our living standards are also based on a crime. But that crime and exposed higher. And here's why. Technology reduces prices. That means the natural state of a free market is deflationary. And every single thing, so think about how big that statement is. The natural state of a free market is deflationary. That means anything that stops it, all of the nonsense around teaching you economics and all the different words to be able to exploit a crime that stops the productivity from flowing to you in the form of lower prices, is all a big mirage to be able to hide this crime at a global scale. Because what it has to do is it has to extract the price that should be falling to you to other people. And it's a global crime.
And it's a dance between the IMF and the government, right? So what does the IMF want? The IMF wants cheap stuff for the West. That's like one of the things that it does through its policies. It tries to get things as cheaply as possible.
Hold on, is that publicly known? Is that public stated?
Never. No. Their public statement is they want to stabilize the world and end poverty or something like that.
Is a public statement that inflation is, most people would think it's good for you.
Is it a public statement that currency debasement or devaluation is a crime?
Is it a public statement that QE is, like, nobody knows what this means.
It's gaslighting.
It's gaslighting. The whole thing is gaslighting.
All you have to do is look at the actual results, though, right? So what happens when you do this devaluation is that labor in that country becomes very cheap. And the goods that are made, obviously labor is a huge component of the cost of a good, right? Becomes very cheap. So countries around Malawi, countries far away from Malawi, can start getting stuff from Malawi for way cheaper because their currency just got a whole lot stronger against the kwacha, right? So if you compare the dollar to the kwacha, think how much more Malawian stuff we can buy with our dollars. And what Jeff is saying is definitely true in terms of, one of the ways we've subsidized quality of life in our societies. Beyond all like the great things we've done in terms of Western civilization, property rights, free speech, innovation, all that stuff, we have taken advantage of other countries to access very, very cheap labor, and that subsidizes our way of life. There's no way that Americans can have the way of life they had without countries like Malawi providing cheap stuff. It just would never happen.
And this is something I actually disagree with.
Okay.
And I disagree with, there is a way, but it would increase, the global wealth would increase faster and everyone would win because prices would fall.
Right.
And so we can't even imagine what that world would look like because we've lived in a world that's extracted from people.
Right. I'm just describing the world we've seen.
Yeah.
Well, of course, it could be different.
Yeah.
No, let's come back to that, because the interesting point on all of this is that we were told the story when we were there in Malawi. We were told the story of 80,000 slaves were marched through Malawi towards the coast to be exported wherever in the world.
On the coast of Mozambique, on the Indian Ocean, yes.
And you could probably explain the story better, but to me it seems like all we've done is we've now just left the slavery in the country and we've exported the goods at a lower price.
So we have modern day slavery.
Yeah, it's modern slavery.
We have modern day slavery disguised as economics.
Yeah.
That's what we have.
And to color in the detail, we were in a place where the building that we were staying in was actually built to try and stop the slave trade. It was built by people who were abolitionists who were trying to stop the Portuguese colonial export of slaves to Brazil, where at one point in the late 19th century, 80,000 slaves per year were being extracted from what is now Malawi and Mozambique to put on ships to take all the way around where South Africa is up to Brazil. Apparently only 2 of 10 actually survived and made it to Brazil. I mean, we can't even comprehend the monstrosity of what happened. But the point of what we're trying to say is the world has shifted the repression. So the repression used to be obvious and blatant. Now it's hidden, right? So again, a currency devaluation is probably the most devastating weapon you could target at a country, more than any sort of physical weapon, right? But it's hidden. It's unknown. It's invisible. Even people on the street, they're like, yeah, this really sucks, but they don't, it's not like they think that there's been this huge crime against them.
Often they even vote for more to making government bigger and trying desperately to get more money. They vote for more repression.
And to be clear, there were protests. So one of the folks we interviewed yesterday was telling us that in the 3 major cities, there were protests. The police came out, beat the crap out of people, and then they kind of died down, and that was it. I mean, this is, again, a country that's somewhat of a democracy, but it has a big problem with police brutality and corruption. And, police are not going to get in trouble for beating the crap out of somebody here. So they used force to put any sort of, questions down, and then they proceed. And again, they're going to do it again. I mean, imagine another 25% currency devaluation.